Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, translated by Constance Garnett. Number 4. Ha ha ha. You will be finding enjoyment in toothache next. You cry with a laugh. Well, even in toothache there is enjoyment. I answer. I had toothache for a whole month and I know there is. In that case, of course, people are not spiteful in silence but moan. But they are not candid moans. They are malignant moans. And the malignancy is the whole point. The enjoyment of the sufferer finds expression in those moans. If he did not feel enjoyment in them, he would not moan. It is a good example, gentlemen, and I will develop it. Those moans express in the first place all the aimlessness of your pain, which is so humiliating to your consciousness. The whole legal system of nature on which you spit disdainfully, of course, but from which you suffer all the same while she does not. They express the consciousness that you have no enemy to punish, but that you have pain. The consciousness that in spite of all possible Wagenheims, you are in complete slavery to your teeth. That if someone wishes it, your teeth will leave off aching. And if he does not, they will go on aching another 3 months. And that finally, if you are still contumacious and still protest, all that is left you for your own gratification is to thrash yourself or beat your wall with your fists as hard as you can, and absolutely nothing more. Well, these mortal insults, these jeers on the part of someone unknown, and at last in the enjoyment which sometimes reaches the highest degree of voluptuousness, I ask you, gentlemen, listen sometimes to the moans of an educated man of the 19th century suffering from toothache. On the second or third day of the attack, when he is beginning to moan, not as he moaned on the first day, that is, not simply because he has toothache, not just as any coarse peasant, but as a man affected by progress and European civilization, a man who is divorced from the soil and the national elements. As they express it nowadays, his moans become nasty, disgustingly malignant, and go on for whole days and nights. And of course, he knows himself that he is doing himself no sort of good with his moans. He knows better than anyone that he is only lacerating and harassing himself and others for nothing. He knows that even the audience before whom he is making his efforts and his whole family listen to him with loathing, do not put a apath of faith in him and inwardly understand that he might mourn differently, more simply without trills and flourishes, and that he is only amusing himself like that from ill humor, from malignancy. Well, in all these recognitions and disgraces, it is that there lies a voluptuous pleasure, as though he would say, I am worrying you, I am lacerating your hearts, I am keeping everyone in the house awake. Well, stay awake then, you too. Feel every minute that I have a toothache. I am not a hero to you now, as I tried to seem before, but simply a nasty person, an impostor. Well, so be it. Then I am very glad that you see through me. It is nasty for you to hear my despicable moans. Well, let it be nasty. Here, I will let you have a nastier flourish in a minute. You do not understand even now, gentlemen. No, it seems our development and our consciousness must go further to understand all the intricacies of this pleasure. You laugh, delighted. My jests, gentlemen, are, of course, in bad taste, jerky, involved, lacking self confidence, but of course, that is because I do not respect myself. Can a man of perception respect himself at all? Number 5. Come, can a man who attempts to find enjoyment in the very feeling of his own degradation possibly have a spark of respect for himself? I am not saying this now from any mawkish kind of remorse. And indeed, I could never endure saying, "Forgive me, Papa. I won't do it again." Not because I am incapable of saying that, on the contrary, perhaps just because I have been too capable of it. And in what a way, too! As though of design, I used to get into trouble in cases when I was not to blame in any way. That was the nastiest part of it. At the same time, I was genuinely touched and penitent. I used to shed tears and, of course, deceived myself, though I was not acting in the least, and there was a sick feeling in my heart at the time. For that one could not blame even the laws of nature, though the laws of nature have continually all my life offended me more than anything. It is loathsome to remember it all, but it was loathsome even then. Of course, a minute or so later, I would realize wrathfully that it was all a lie, a revolting lie, an affected lie. That is, all this penitence, this emotion, these vows of reform. You will ask, why did I worry myself with such antics? Answer, because it was very dull to sit with one's hands folded, and so one began cutting capers. That is really it. Observe yourselves more carefully, gentlemen. Then you will understand that it is so. I invented adventures for myself and made up a life, so as at least to live in some way. How many times it has happened to me? Well, for instance, to take offense simply on purpose for nothing, and one knows oneself, of course, that one is offended at nothing, that one is putting it on, but yet one brings oneself at last to the point of being really offended. All my life I have had an impulse to play such pranks, so that in the end I could not control it myself. Another time, twice in fact, I tried hard to be in love. I suffered too, gentlemen. I assure you, in depth of my heart, there was no faith in my suffering, only a faint stir of mockery. But yet I did suffer. And in the real orthodox way, I was jealous beside myself. And it was all from ennui, gentlemen. All from ennui. Inertia overcame me. You know, the direct legitimate fruit of consciousness is inertia. That is, conscious sitting with the hands folded. I have referred to this already. I repeat with emphasis. All direct persons and men of action are active just because they are stupid and limited. How explain that? I will tell you. In consequence of their limitation, they take immediate and secondary causes for primary ones, and in that way persuade themselves more quickly and easily than other people do that they have found an infallible foundation for their activity, and their minds are at least, and that is the chief thing. To begin to act, you must first have your mind completely at ease and no trace of doubt left in it. Why? How am I, for example, to set my mind at rest? Where are the primary causes on which I am to build? Where are my foundations? Where am I to get them from? I exercise myself in reflection, and consequently with me, every primary cause at once draws after itself another still more primary, and so on to infinity. That is just the essence of every sort of consciousness and reflection. It must be a case of the laws of nature again. What is the result of it in the end? Why, just the same. Remember, I spoke just now of vengeance. I am sure you did not take it in. I said that a man revenges himself because he sees justice in it. Therefore, he has found a primary cause, that is, justice. And so he is at rest on all sides, and consequently, he carries out his revenge calmly and successfully, being persuaded that he is doing a just and honest thing. But I see no justice in it. I find no sort of virtue in it either, and consequently, if I attempt to revenge myself, it is only out of spite. Spite, of course, might overcome everything, all my doubts, and so might serve quite successfully in place of a primary cause, precisely because it is not a cause. But what is to be done if I have not even spite? I began with that just now, you know. In consequence again of those accursed laws of consciousness, anger in me is subject to chemical disintegration. You look into it, the object flies off into the air. Your reasons evaporate. The criminal is not to be found. The wrong becomes not a wrong but a phantom, something like a toothache for which no one is to blame, and consequently there is only the same outlet left again, that is, to beat the wall as hard as you can. So you give it up with the wave of the hand because you have not found a fundamental cause, and try letting yourself be carried away by your feelings blindly, without reflection, without a primary cause, repelling consciousness at least for a time, hate or love, if only not to sit with your hands folded. The day after tomorrow, at the latest, you will begin despising yourself for having knowingly deceived yourself. Result: a soap bubble and inertia. Oh, gentlemen, do you know? Perhaps I consider myself an intelligent man only because all my life I have been able neither to begin nor to finish anything. Granted, I am a babbler, a harmless, vexatious babbler like all of us. But what is to be done if the direct and sole vocation of every intelligent man is babble? That is, the intentional pouring of water through a sieve. Number 6. Oh, if I had done nothing simply from laziness. Heavens, how I should have respected myself then. I should have respected myself because I should at least have been capable of being lazy. There would at least have been one quality, as it were, positive in me, in which I could have believed myself. Question: what is he? Answer: a sluggard. How very unpleasant it would have been to hear of that oneself. It would mean that I was positively defined. It would mean that there was something to say about me. Sluggard. Why, it is a calling and vocation. It is a career. Do not jest. It is so. I should then be a member of the best club by right, and should find my occupation in continually respecting myself. I knew a gentleman who prided himself all his life on being a connoisseur of Lafayette. He considered this as his positive virtue and never doubted himself. He died not simply with a tranquil but with a triumphant conscience, and he was quite right too. Then I should have chosen a career for myself. I should have been a sluggard and a glutton, not a simple one, but for instance, one with sympathies for everything good and beautiful. How do you like that? I have long had visions of it. That good and beautiful weighs heavily on my mind at 40. But that is at 40. Then it would have been different. I should have found for myself a form of activity in keeping with it, To be precise, drinking to the health of everything good and beautiful. I should have snatched at every opportunity to drop a tear into my glass and then to drain it to all that is good and beautiful. I should then have turned everything into the good and the beautiful. In the nastiest, unquestionable trash, I should have sought out the good and the beautiful. I should have extended tears like a wet sponge. An artist, for instance, paints a picture worthy of gay. At once I drink to the health of the artist who painted the picture of worthy of gay, because I love all that is good and beautiful. An author has written, as you will. At once I drink to the health of anyone you will, because I love all that is good and beautiful. I should claim respect for doing so. I should persecute anyone who would not show me respect. I should live at ease. I should die with dignity. Why, it is charming, perfectly charming. And what a good round belly I should have grown. What a treble chin I should have established. What a ruby nose I should have colored for myself, so that everyone would have said, looking at me, here is an asset, here is something real and solid, and say what you like. It is very agreeable to hear such remarks about oneself in this negative age. Number 7. But these are all golden dreams. Oh, tell me, who was it first announced? Who was it first proclaimed? That man only does nasty things because he does not know his own interests, and that if he were enlightened, if his eyes were opened to his real normal interests, man would at once cease to do nasty things, would at once become good and noble, because being enlightened and understanding his real advantage, he would see his own advantage in the good and nothing else. And we all know that not one man can consciously act against his own interests consequently. So to say, through necessity, he would begin doing good. Oh, the babe! Oh, the pure, innocent child! Why, in the first place, when in all these thousands of years has there been a time when man has acted only from his own interest? What is to be done with the millions of facts that bear witness that man, consciously, that is fully understanding their real interests, have left them in the background and have rushed headlong on another path to meet peril and danger, compelled to this course by nobody and by nothing, but as it were, simply disliking the beaten track, and have obstinately, wilfully struck out another difficult, absurd way, seeking it almost in the darkness. So I suppose this obstinacy and perversity were pleasanter to them than any advantage. Advantage? What is advantage? And will you take it upon yourself to define with perfect accuracy in what the advantage of man consists? And what if it so happens that man's advantage sometimes not only may, but even must consist in his desiring in certain cases what is harmful to himself and not advantageous? And if so, if there can be such a case, the whole principle falls into dust. What do you think? Are there such cases? You laugh, laugh away, gentlemen, but only answer me. Have man's advantages been reckoned up with perfect certainty? Are there not some which not only have not been included but cannot possibly be included under any classification? You see, you gentlemen have, to the best of my knowledge, taken your whole register of human advantages from the averages of statistical figures and politico economical formulas. Your advantages are prosperity, wealth, freedom, peace, and so on, and so on. So that the man who should, for instance, go openly and knowingly in opposition to all that list would, to your thinking, and indeed mine too, of course, be an obscurantist or an absolute madman, would not he? But this is what is surprising. Why does it so happen that all these statisticians, sages, and lovers of humanity, when they reckon up human advantages, invariably leave out one? They don't even take it into their reckoning in the form in which it should be taken. And the whole reckoning depends upon that. It would be no great matter. They would simply have to take it, this advantage, and add it to the list. But the trouble is that this strange advantage does not fall under any classification and is not in place in any list. I have a friend, for instance, gentleman, but of course he is your friend too. And indeed, there is no one to whom he is not a friend. When he prepares for any undertaking, this gentleman immediately explains to you, elegantly and clearly, exactly how he must act in accordance with the laws of reason and truth. What is more, he will ask to you with excitement and passion of the true normal interests of man. With irony, he will upbraid the short sighted fools who do not understand their own interests nor the true significance of virtue. And within a quarter of an hour, without any sudden outside provocation, but simply through something inside him which is stronger than all his interests, he will go off on quite a different track. That is, act in direct opposition to what he has just been saying about himself, in opposition to the laws of reason, in opposition to his own advantage, in fact, in opposition to everything. I warn you that my friend is a compound personality and therefore it is difficult to blame him as an individual. The fact is, gentlemen, it seems there must really exist something that is dearer to almost every man than his greatest advantages, or, not to be illogical, there is a most advantageous advantage, the very one omitted of which we speak just now, which is more important and more advantageous than all other advantages, for the sake of which a man, if necessary, is ready to act in opposition to all laws. That is, in opposition to reason, honor, peace, prosperity. In fact, in opposition to all those excellent and useful things, if only he can attain that fundamental, most advantageous advantage, which is dearer to him than all. Yes, but it's advantage all the same. You will retort, but excuse me, I'll make the point clear, and it is not a case of playing upon words. What matters is that this advantage is remarkable from the very fact that it breaks down all our classifications and continually shatters every system constructed by lovers of mankind for the benefit of mankind. In fact, it upsets everything. But before I mention this advantage to you, I want to compromise myself personally, and therefore I boldly declare that all these fine systems, all these theories for explaining to mankind their real normal interests, in order that inevitably striving to pursue these interests, they may at once become good and noble, are, in my opinion, so far mere logical exercises. Yes, logical exercises. Why to maintain this theory of the regeneration of mankind by means of the pursuit of his own advantage is to my mind almost the same thing as to affirm, for instance, following Buckle, that through civilization mankind becomes softer and consequently less bloodthirsty and less fitted for warfare. Logically, it does seem to follow from his arguments, but Man has such a predilection for systems and abstract deductions that he is ready to distort the truth intentionally. He is ready to deny the evidence of his senses only to justify his logic. I take this example because it is the most glaring instance of it. Only look about you. Blood is being spilt in streams and in the merriest way, as though it were champagne. Take the whole of the 19th century in which Buckle lived. Take Napoleon the Great and also the present one. Take North America, the Eternal Union. Take the farce of Schleswig Holstein. And what is it that civilization softens in us? The only gain of civilization for mankind is the greater capacity for variety of sensations and absolutely nothing more. And through the development of this many-sidedness, man may come to finding enjoyment in bloodshed. In fact, this has already happened to him. Have you noticed that it is the most civilized gentlemen who have been the subtlest slaughterers, to whom the Attalus and Stenka raisins could not hold a candle, and if they are not so conspicuous as the Attalus and Stenka raisins, it is simply because they are so often met with, are so ordinary, and have become so familiar to us in any case. Civilization has made mankind, if not more bloodthirsty, at least more wildly, more loathsomely bloodthirsty. In old days, he saw justice in bloodshed and with his conscience at peace exterminated those he thought proper. Now we do think bloodshed abominable, and yet we engage in this abomination and with more energy than ever. Which is worse? Decide that for yourselves. They say that Cleopatra, excuse an instance from Roman history, was fond of sticking gold pins into her slave girls' breasts and derived gratification from their screams and writhings. You will say that that was in the comparatively barbarous times, that these are barbarous times too, because also, comparatively speaking, pins are stuck in even now. That though man has now learned to see more clearly than in barbarous ages, he is still far from having learned to act as reason and science would dictate. But yet, you are fully convinced that he will be sure to learn when he gets rid of certain old bad habits and when common sense and science have completely re educated human nature and turned it in a normal direction. You are confident that then man will cease from intentional error and will, so to say, be compelled not to want to set his will against his normal interests. That is not all. Then you may say science itself will teach man, though to my mind it's a superfluous luxury, that he never has really had any caprice or will of his own, and that he himself is something of the nature of a piano key or the stop of an organ, and that there are besides things called the laws of nature, so that everything he does is not done by his willing it, but is done of himself by the laws of nature. Consequently, we have only to discover these laws of nature, and man will no longer have to answer for his actions, and life will become exceedingly easy for him. All human actions will then, of course, be tabulated according to these laws mathematically, like tables of logarithms up to 108,000 and entered in an index. Or better still, there would be published certain edifying works of the nature of encyclopedic lexicons, in which everything will be so clearly calculated and explained that there will be no more incidents of or adventures in the world. Then This is all what you say. New economic relations will be established, all ready made and worked out with mathematical exactitude, so that every possible question will vanish in the twinkling of an eye simply because every possible answer to it will be provided. Then the palace of crystal will be built. Then, in fact, those will be halcyon days. Of course, there is no guaranteeing, this is my comment, that it will not be, for instance, frightfully dull. Then for what will one have to do when everything will be calculated and tabulated? But on the other hand, everything will be extraordinary, rational. Of course, boredom may lead you to anything. It is boredom sets one sticking golden pins into people. But all that would not matter. What is bad, this is my comment again, is that I dare say people will be thankful for the gold pins then. Man is stupid, phenomenally stupid. Or rather, he is not at all stupid, but he is so ungrateful that you could not find another like him in all creation. I, for instance, would not be in the least surprised if all of a sudden, apropos of nothing, in the midst of general prosperity, a gentleman with an ignoble, or rather with a reactionary and ironical countenance were to arise and putting his arms akimbo, say to us all, I say, gentlemen, hadn't we better kick over the whole show and scatter rationalism to the winds simply to send these logarithms to the devil and to enable us to live once more at our own sweet foolish will? That again would not matter, but what is annoying is that he would be sure to find followers. Such is the nature of man, and all that for the most foolish reason, which one would think was hardly worth mentioning. That is, that man everywhere and at all times, whoever he may be, has preferred to act as he chose and not in the least as his reason and advantage dictated. And one may choose what is contrary to one's own interests, and sometimes one positively ought. That is my idea. One's own free, unfettered choice, one's own caprice, however wild it may be, one's own fancy worked up at times to frenzy, is that very most advantageous advantage which we have overlooked, which comes under no classification and against which all systems and theories are continually being shattered to atoms. And how do these wiseacres know that man wants a normal, a virtuous choice? What has made them conceive that man must want a rationally advantageous choice? What man wants is simply independent choice, whatever that independence may cost and whatever it may lead. And choice, of course, the devil only knows what choice.